Hi, I'm Susan Papanicholas from How Does Your Garden Grow? I'm here at a client's garden in mid-March, and I wanted to show you this really beautiful Corsican Hellebore. This is Helleborus argutifolius. It's a different species than the more common hellebores that are woodland plants like Helleborus orientalis. This one actually grows really well in full sun. This garden gets baked by afternoon sun, and the Corsican hellebores in this garden are doing fantastic. They start blooming in February with these really beautiful chartreuse green flowers. They start out as these tiny little buds and then open up into these big stalks of flowers. On hellebores, this kind of showy part of the flower is actually a modified leaf called a bract. And because the flower parts are less showy and on the inside here, they finish and fall off, but you keep the bract. So it looks like it's still in bloom, even though the parts of the flower that make the seeds have fallen off, and that's done. And the seeds are now forming inside this bract. That's one of the reasons hellebores are such a long-lasting flower, is because the really showy part of the flower isn't really where the reproductive action is happening. So it lasts a lot longer. I love this plant because it has this bold, tooth, coarse leaf. It does great in full sun and well-drained soils. I think that this flower color is really spectacular. It's so bright and cheery in the winter when it's in full bloom, and it looks wonderful. You really need to give this plant a lot of real estate. This is one Corsican hellebore in here, and it's taking up about 3 to 4 feet of diameter, which is surprising for a perennial. When it's in full bloom like this, it's coming up to be about 3-4 feet high as well. Here we are in an area of the garden where the Corsican hellebore has reseeded. I think we planted 1 or 2 here originally, and now it's made this really big drift of about 5 plants in here that just look fantastic when they're in full bloom. It's finishing up flowering now. The stalks are falling over and falling open, and I can see the new growth starting in the center, so it's time to cut it back. And you do that just by cutting the flowering stalk all the way at the base. That way, the new foliage can come up and emerge, and you'll have a really beautiful, coarse, toothy leaf filling in this space. It won't be quite as tall, but it will be as wide. Another thing that's good about cutting the flower stems off at that point is that this plant can reseed pretty vigorously. So if you cut those stalks off as the flowers are finishing up, you don't get quite as many seedlings popping up in your garden. If you want the seedlings, leave the flowers up a little bit longer and it'll reseed around the garden. It's a great plant for 4 seasons of interest, really beautiful coarse toothed leaves, and this lovely like green on green flowering situation happening in late winter and early spring. It's fantastic.